rising of the Easter sun, how the morning breaks to the sound of guns. For 6 whole days the battle roared through the streets of Dublin to the four courts. With the setting of on the Easter sun, no turning back, nowhere to run. How could they sleep? Did they lie in fear? Oh, their choice ran deep, their choice for 100 years. So look at us now, 100 years old, because of brothers, they stood as one. So look at us now, 100 years old, come and feel the warmth of the Easter sun.
As regards the British Empire, it has been said, the Irish won it, the Scots ran it, and the English lost it. It wasn't just thespians and wordsmiths who led the rising. Many were experienced soldiers who had seen action, particularly in the Boer War and India.
There was about 7 of them or 8 of them altogether in the 1916 rising. 4 of them bear a mention and 4 of them didn't. They weren't all brothers, some of them were cousins and sons. And we got reference on 4 pension papers.
And there's very, very little known about the Poole family. That's amazing.
It's not a documentary, it's a movementary.
Yeah.
You make a movie out of it.
Yeah, yeah.
You know, and that's where it goes, because there's, you know, it's so ingrained in our family.
Yeah.
You know, we if you find it shocking as a person that why didn't this happen, imagine how we feel.
Very much put out and hurt, and Vincent was very emotional about the whole thing there, as that our grandfather, and not only him but his brothers who fought with him, Vincent and Paddy, that they never did get their rightful place in Irish history. And I firmly believe, and I don't mind being public about it, that to use the Dublin phrase, his eye was white because he was an ordinary Joe Soap.
One of the big things that people are pushing for 2016 is the whole ideology of reconciling.
Yeah.
And to do that before you recognise the people that have kind of taken part in it. Our family is so well knitted into the history of the country that, to have it swallowed up and kind of put to the side and just kind of posterise the main people, the signatories, and just the general people who you hear all the time about. It's just wrong.
What's really sad is that these brothers, when they were so important in Irish history and Irish politics, that they didn't leave enough stuff behind them.
Yeah.
To keep us all informed. So where we are now, grandchildren and great-grand-nephews, literally digging to get the information, to pass on to our children, so that they won't be forgotten.
They won't be lost,
Okay.
because they were very important people, at their time. And it's just that we feel, as a family, that justice wasn't given to them through history.
Christopher went to the British Army with John Poole. John was his older brother.
Yeah.
And there's not much mention about John. There's more of a mention about the other brothers. But when Christopher entered into the British Army, it was kind of stricken poverty in those days. I mean, there was nothing. So eventually they joined up to the British Army, to get some money together. And they always had it in their head about their older brother Joseph. So when they came to get their training, after they decided to leave the British Army and come back and see what was happening in Ireland. And also when they were in the Boer War, they actually heard what was happening at home. So things were okay in the Boer War before they even actually got home. Because people were changing their minds and making their minds up, and they were realising whose side are we on the right side, are we on the wrong side.
Okay.
And then what they done was, they seen the way the Boers used to attack the British and got a lot of guerrilla warfare training. So they used to teach the guys in prison, when they were in prison in 1916, they used to teach them how to do the guerrilla warfare. He spent a long time in the British Army, I think it was 12 years overall, and between India and Africa. And the amount of training that he had, that's why he was graded where he was, you know, by the leaders. And so they felt that he had full control, you know, of no matter what garrison that he took over.
Okay.
So he drilled and trained them then all leading up to 1916 and showed them how to dig trenches and marched them in up to Croydon Park many a time and brought them around doing drilling and training, you know.
James O'Shea, witness statement 733. We had on this Sunday an All-Ireland display for John Redmond. We were now very proficient with rifle and bayonet, and there were 2 squads picked for display and competition. We went through a further gruelling by Captain Kit Poole. We entered for drill competition in Carlow. We marched from Liberty Hall to Kingsbridge Station. Mike Mallon and Kit Poole went into the station to make arrangements. We did our stuff in style in Carlow, and before we finished, the Chief Judge, an ex-British Army man, said to Captain Poole, "March off your old sweats." We got a great ovation.
But it was the poverty really at the time that more or less led the people into strife. When Larkin came over from Liverpool, they were just waiting for, you know, a hammer to strike.
Yeah.
Because the way it was so poor down here. They were waiting for one spark to ignite the fire. And that's what happened. Larkin came along a long time before anybody and going out on strike, which led up to 1930 and the lockout.
The Metropolitan Police were the employer's enforcers. Witness statement William O'Brien 1766. On November the 1st, 1913, George Bernard Shaw, at the Albert Hall, London, in support of the strikes said, "I suggest you should arm yourselves with something which would put a decisive stop to the proceedings of the police." On November 13th, 1913, James Connolly said, "The next time we are out for a march, I want you to be accompanied by 4 battalions of trained men with their corporals and sergeants. Why should we not train our men in Dublin as they are doing in Ulster?" On December 12, 1913, he said, "We are organising a citizen army and drilling every day." On 16th December, Captain White wrote in a Daily Herald, "And so through your columns I would make this appeal to the Dublin workers. Throw yourself into this drill like men determined to advance patiently and steadily to a sure goal." In March 1914, a constitution was adopted and an army council and officers appointed.
Larkin, when he came down from Belfast and all, and he seen Dublin in such a bad state. And through the inception of the Citizen Army and the links they had with Britain, and when they came over here and seen the poverty, you know, Larkin seen the poverty so bad here. And my granddad, I think at that stage, was working on the docks. He was a docker. And through that time, he seen, you know, when the poverty was so bad and around the lockout, were stealing the stuff off the ships as it was coming into Dublin.
Okay.
And they were feeding the people of Dublin, the city people of Dublin, because there wasn't a great representation of any other real organisation, being the volunteers or whatever it may be. They didn't really go into the normal working class people. They were more into the tradespeople, where When Jim Larkin came down and with the Citizen Army, they took any worker, whoever you were, and they accepted anybody into the union at that time. And this is where the inception of the Citizen Army was, to protect the worker against, you know, the times that were around at that time, like the British and the shopkeepers who were not being fair, and they were, you know, this is how the lockout came about. We only found out ourselves that some of the stuff that he did, like training the people up in Croydon Park. And I think my own father said to me at one stage, Vincent, my dad, Vincent Senior, he said to me, he said, because they had no money to buy rifles and for arms, he said, they trained them with Horleys. They brought them up and, you know, and put the Horleys on their shoulders. And like, we were fascinated, me and Michael, at that time.
According to R.M. Fox, The History of the Irish Citizen Army, on Palm Sunday 1916, in front of the hall itself, the Citizen Army cleared the space and formed up on 3 sides of the square. Captain C. Poole and a colour guard of 16 men escorted the colour bearer, Miss Molly O'Reilly of the Women's Workers' Union, who is also a member of the Citizen Army. The flag was placed on a pile of drums in the centre of the square. Commandant James Connolly took up his position with Vice Commandant Mallon on his left and Lieutenant Markovich on his right. The colour bearer advanced from her escort, received the colours from the Commandant and turned to face the colour guard. The bugle sounded the salute and the guard presented arms. From the centre of the square came the skirl of pipes, quickening the blood of the heart and making them feel that at last the nation was on the march. According to Anne Matthews, the Irish Citizen Army, Christopher Poole was appointed second in command to Michael Mallon. Seamus Kavanagh later described Poole as the captain of the ICA unit that occupied St. Stephen's Green under the command of the late Michael Mallon. When Countess de Markovich arrived at Stephen's Green, Michael Mallon, Christopher and the main part of the ICA garrison had taken the park.
Of Christie, for example, I mean, he was going to be in one of the major centres where prisoners were going to be held. There was going to be a centre, as Paul O'Brien says in his book, on it, that where one of the reasons the Stephen's Green was taken was it was a source of water. They would have water. They could hold prisoners in it, in an open space. They would have had a lot more men and women to fight. They could have taken the buildings around, but on the day when they started out, about 125 or so people there, they couldn't actually do what had been planned. And this is what one of the great things about Stephen's Green was that he had 2 soldiers, Mallon and Poole, who could actually change the plans. And first thing, obviously, to fail in any battle is the plan. But these could adapt, and they did adapt. And if the British were to cut off the water, or if it was cut off through explosives or whatever, they would have a source of water there, the pond, basically.
According to R.M. Fox, The History of the Irish Citizen Army, with the evacuation of civilians complete, Captain Christopher Poole allocated a company of men to secure each entrance into the Green. While some gates were barricaded with wheelbarrows, gardening implements and park benches, Captain Poole ordered a number of men to dig slit trenches and foxholes covering the main entrances. The company started digging in, getting out their trenching tools and implements and excavating shallow holes so that they could get below ground level but still have a good firing position. After coming under heavy machine gun fire from the surrounding buildings, including the Shelburne Hotel on Tuesday morning, his group, along with other combatants in the park, were forced to retreat to the College of Surgeons. According to Paul O'Brien's shootout, The Battle for St. Stephen's Green, the Irish Citizen Army was out in the open and pinned down by soldiers who now had every battlefield advantage. Within the park, the first indication of British troops was the burst of machine gun fire that ripped through the overhanging trees and thudded into the ground. A ragged fire was opened up on the hotel, but all this seemed to do was attract the attention of the machine gunner, who swiveled the weapon to where the firing had come from. In a death trap, all they could do was lie under a rain of fire. According to James O'Shea, I heard Commandant Mallon's whistle going, so I prepared to vacate the trench. Madam told me we were to evacuate the green and go to the College of Surgeons. Everything was being done in a very orderly fashion. As the gunner prepared to change his spent magazine, the volunteers would run across the road to the side door of the college on York Street. Each unit would only have a few seconds to cover the distance of over 100 yards of open ground. The order to make ready was shouted down the line as the men edged nearer the gate. The machine gunner ceased firing in order to change his magazine. At the park entrance, Captain Poole mustered the men, and in separate sections they put their heads down and ran out the west gate towards the college. According to Christopher Poole, Madame de Markovitch found a cache of arms, 89 rifles and 24,000 rounds of ammunition. They distributed the rifles to the men, and Poole brought them downstairs to the rifle range where he gave them instructions on how to use them. They sent the surplus rifles to the garrison at Jacob's Biscuit Factory. Within the college, Commandant Mallon assessed the situation. He consolidated his position by tunnelling through adjacent buildings, securing his perimeter, enabling him to return fire on enemy posts from this alien environment smelling of formaldehyde. On Thursday, British troops had manoeuvred themselves into a position threatening Mallon's position. A squad, including Margaret Skinner, was deployed to remove this threat. But gunfire erupted and she was seriously wounded. A twice-daily truce was observed by both sides during the remainder of the week to allow Mr. James Carney, the park keeper, to enter the green to feed the ducks.
Patrick Poole was my granddad's brother, his younger brother. And he was the youngest of the family, actually, Patrick, as far as the brothers was concerned. And he fought in the green under my granddad. And he came out through the gate beside Grafton Street, at the top of Grafton Street there, when all the firing was going on, and it was coming near the end of the firing in the ring. And he was actually shell-shocked at this stage from all the firing that was going on between cannon fire and machine gun fire. And people thought he was at the going a bit funny, but it so happened that he got very shell-shocked, and he ran out in the middle of the street at the top of Grafton Street, and he says, "Come on, you, whatever, blah blah blah, shoot if you want." And he started shooting up at them, and he started hearing voices and different tones in his head, all due to shell shock. And people was wondering what was wrong, but it was only later on, you know, when he got and started talking to him, that they realised that he went a bit funny due to all the firing that went on.
Yeah.
It says, another man who held a pivotal position in Stevens' Green Forces was Captain C. Poole. He, like the others, drilled and trained the Irish Citizen Army. He had a British military experience. Poole's name is frequently mentioned in the earlier records of the Citizen Army activities. One of his distinctions is that he held the only Lee Enfield rifle belonging to the Irish Citizen Army in years before 1916. It was intended that Poole should have control of Stevens' Green. This would have been a most responsible position and indicates the confidence responded in him by the leaders. Up to the evacuation of the Green, he had full command there under Michael Mallon and placed his forces in a soldierly and efficient way. After the evacuation of the Green, he retired with his forces to the College of Surgeons, and he served until his surrender. My grandfather was one of the only ones that was in it from the beginning to the end. Even the leaders, you had a lot of leaders going in and out and leaving it at times and coming back. At certain times, some of them left it and never came back. But my granddad stood his ground. He stayed from the beginning to the end. And when he got out from prison in 1917, late 1917, he actually went back and started it all up again, the Citizen Army, with a few others.
My grandfather, after 1916, when they came back, from Francock, he took control of the Citizen Army, and he commandeered an American ship on the Liffey, and took all the guns and munitions off it. As I said, he was a docker, so he knew the docks and he would have known who to speak to. And he knew that this ship came in loaded, an American gunship, as we would say, loaded with guns, and they took everything to rearm the citizen army because every gun and everything they had was taken off him. Now, if you look through the witness statements, he was questioned on that. And one of the smart things that I kind of that highlighted it was the way he was questioned. One of the things was, and what did you do with what you got off the ship? Like, he had it down his back garden. You know what I mean? So he was treated as a third-class citizen. And also, as Francis said, he was talking to Micheál there earlier on, he said, when you look at the wife, his wife who stood behind him, Alice, that, you know, she had to look after her family with nothing. And then probably had, you know, people banging her door down, looking for guns and looking for everything else that were, you know, supposedly that he has stashed away.
Some of the real heroes of 1916, 1913, 22 and 23, the real heroes of Dublin, ordinary, common or working class people. And that was the reason why people like my grandfather didn't have his rifle placed in Irish history. It was more romantic to have other people higher up the social scale.
But his wife or his mother or his daughter still had to carry on and look after that family for him. They had to nurse the sick, they had to run safe houses, they had to hide, as you say, weapons in the houses, etc. And they were attacked by the British Army and later by the Free State Army as it went on, and they had to do this and do it quietly.
The only minutes of meetings which you have is the 19 minutes. The general meeting on Sunday, April 1919, the 4th, Captain Poole presiding. The members were warned that there would be an anniversary mass in Church Street for the late Commandant James Connolly on Sunday the 11th. Captain Poole asked men to attend drill and more regularly, as it was very essential, and spoke of the necessity for members attending drill and instructions. This being all the business, the meeting concluded, signed Joe O'Neill in June 1919.
If you look through the military pensions and the military witnesses and the stuff that you read, it sounds so demeaning of the way he was spoken to by his the people who questioned him. And as Michael just said, and Francis would say, those people, remember, were the winners, you know, after 1916. They were the pro-free people. And so they didn't have much time, you know, to stand there and listen to a guy who was looking for a pension, you know, from a group of people who were after taking the British crown. You know what I mean? Yeah. So you could imagine, you know, as Michael said to me the other night on the phone, he said, could you imagine the fear? He said, when they were being questioned, what did you do? Or how did you command? Or who was under you? They had to watch what they were saying. So we don't, although we see the glossy parts of it, it's the undercurrent of what went on that we're trying to understand, which brings a whole finality to the thing. That, you know, how his position he held, and, you know, and taking control of it after Mallon and Connolly were shot dead, and looking after his men that were still alive, that he was at being retraining them over in Frangop. He had to come back and look after them. There was no point in teaching them over there what to do and coming back with nothing. So whatever he did, if you read the transcripts, you know, he was an incredible person. And then even he saved, if you look at some of the transcripts, he saved the people who were in Stephen's Green of a terrible finality. They would have been absolutely blown to pieces only for him. He knew how to count the seconds from gun to gun, how fast he shot. He knew how long it took them to reload the guns, and could tell the fellas to run now, because he knew, he was listening to them, how experienced he was it's incredible. He was an incredible man.
Vincent Poole, aged 36, was a hard, experienced man from Dublin's inner city. He'd been in the British Army fighting against the Boers. Once out of the army, back home in 1910, he'd found work with Dublin Corporation in the sewers beneath the city at a wage of £1 a week. He was aware of the place assigned to him as a subject of the British Empire. He was also aware of his place as a working-class man in a city where the 1913 lockout had been a resounding victory for the employers. Vincent was small, 5'3", but he knew how to look after himself. Quick to take offence, he had 18 criminal convictions. In 1915 he got 6 months for making statements prejudicial to the recruitment of His Majesty's forces at a British Army recruitment meeting outside the Custom House. At the GPO, the leaders saw Fairview as a strategic position. Pearce identified it as a bottleneck through which British soldiers would soon pour. Annesley Bridge and Ballybock must be held at all costs. James Connolly ordered Sean T. O'Kelly to take about 20 men to Fairview. O'Kelly, Craven and Vincent Poole set off with a small company to Fairview. At 4:15, a group set up barricades and roadblocks across Annesley Bridge to secure the supply lines from Father Matthew Park, the main arms department of the Irish Volunteers. A musketry school had been set up in the Royal Dublin Golf Club at Bull Island. When they approached, volunteers at Annesley Bridge House launched an attack and the British fled towards the protection of the railway embankment where many were wounded. Earlier, Vincent Poole, the officer in charge, had sent volunteers Colley and Boland to blow up the track to stop troops being brought into the city centre. "You dig a small hole under the railway track," said Vincent. "Then you put the gelignite in the hole, pile the earth back on top of it, light the fuse, and you have 3 minutes to get away before it blows." Harry Colley, Witness Statement 1687. "We were directed to blow up the railway line beyond the Sloblands. None of us knew anything about gelignite. We did as directed, and in running down the embankment to get away, I was so tired that when I tried to jump the small barbed wire fence, I muffed it and tore my thigh badly. I had only got 20 yards when the explosion occurred." Connolly then deployed the men from Fairview to the Metropole Hotel under the direction of Oscar Traynor, who told Connolly that he wasn't comfortable with citizen army men, including Vincent Poole, who was a captain. He was concerned that he should be obeyed by all. Poole bristled. "Did I say I wouldn't obey you?" Traynor accepted Poole's assurance. Poole approached Boland as he entered the Metropole Hotel and charged him with desertion. In his eyes, Boland had disobeyed orders to bring a prisoner to the GPO. Poole raised the butt of his rifle. Traynor intervened. "You're under my orders," he told Poole. "Go upstairs and ensure that all persons occupying rooms in this hotel have left." Poole followed orders. Friday. British troops were being attacked by Frank Henderson from the roof of the GPO. They were taken on by Vincent Poole and Tom Leahy from the Mansfield shoe shop on the corner of Sackville and Middle Abbey Street. As they traded shots with the enemy, Poole kept them amused with tales of his adventures in the British Army fighting against the Boers. But he not only kept them amused, he kept morale high. He was an excellent shot and had an impressive ability to identify the position from which army fire was coming. Thomas Leahy, Witness Statement 660. He, Vincent Poole, seemed to smell the different kinds of bullets and the direction they came from, and many snipers fell to his shooting. During the next day, Thursday, we observed through field glasses taken from British officers in the Metropole many British troops on the roofs. Poole opened fire on them and some were seen to fall from the roofs to the ground. The British were building a barricade in Lower Abbey Street. If they were successful, they would have cover from which they could advance on Sackville Street and perhaps launch an assault on the GPO. To discourage this, Poole, Boland and Leahy kept up a continuous rate of fire, so relentless that the rifle had grown too hot to hold. Oscar Traynor, witness statement 340. It was then that Captain Poole, who had served in the British Army and the South African campaign, proposed that, in the absence of any suitable oil for cooling the rifles, we should open some sardine tins and use this oil. This was done, with the result that the men were able to continue their action. From time to time, they withheld fire to allow the Red Cross to remove the wounded soldiers from Abbey Street. An incendiary shell landed on the roof and began to burn through the building. Daniel Courtney, East Wall. Mansfields was eventually levelled by the British to facilitate an attack on the GPO, but the small garrison held their own to the last until ordered to retreat to Moore Street via the GPO about 8:30 p.m. Frank Henderson was sent into the Blazing Hotel to order their withdrawal. He marvelled that anyone would be alive in such a hellhole. They left the GPO via the Henry Street exit watched over by Pierce. Thomas Leahy, witness statement 660. In the Russian charge, I, Thomas Leahy, stumbled and fell due to the heavy load on my shoulders. I found myself being helped to my feet by P.H. Pierce and Vincent Poole. Traynor told Leahy to get heavy hammers and that we must get through those houses to get to Ned Daly. He said, myself, Poole and Harry Boland will help all we can and cover you from any hostile people in the houses you get through. No one worked harder during that time there than Harry Boland, Traynor, Poole and myself. We got to an ice cream shop, Miss Matassa's ice cream parlour, at number 25, at which point they got orders to stop. This was Saturday 29th of April. Thomas Leahy, witness statement 660. The people leaving the houses blessed us and said prayers for our safety. Some of those innocent people were shot down in cold blood while advancing to the British lines with hands up as non-combatants. Pierce came into the room and saw for himself the fate of those people. He instructed us to stop and have a rest. We threw ourselves on the floor from pure exhaustion. The next thing we heard was that there was a truce or ceasefire on. We could hardly believe such a thing was possible after working so hard to strengthen our positions. It was for the safety of the people in the area. It was a bitter blow to us all at Moore Street. In the rotunda, myself and Vincent Poole were the only two of the group left who had kept together during that glorious week. For his involvement in the rising, Vincent Poole was sentenced to death, which was later commuted to 5 years imprisonment. He served his time in England and was one of the instigators of the Lewes Jail hunger strike. Robert Brennan, Department Dáil Éireann, 1921. Witness statement 779. Vincent Poole, a citizen army man, almost precipitated a general row within the first few days in Lewes prison. He was in the workshop with us and he began to sing The Green Flag. When the warder checked him a few times, he suddenly got up from his seat and yelled at the warder, "What's this about? I might as well be in jail." Whereupon he was brought before the governor and sent to the cells. He even refused to let the warders enter his cell, and when they tried to put him in the straitjacket, he beat them. A section of the prisoners wanted a sympathetic strike in his favour, but De Valera had had a prisoners' council elected and they decided against it. There was a very strained atmosphere, however, until Poole was returned to us. Vincent Poole was released in June 1917. At one stage, Poole reckoned the National Aid Committee, which distributed aid to needy dependents of those killed in the Rising, wasn't giving a fair share to the citizen army veterans. He interrupted a meeting at which Michael Collins presided and produced a pistol. Bill O'Brien persuaded him to put it away. Poole had a point. Payments were made according to the income of the deceased. Relatives of those with middle-class jobs got significantly more than families of manual workers. The dependents of officers were on a higher rate. Poole left a dwindling citizen army and joined the IRA in 1920. He fought in the War of Independence and went against the treaty, serving in the Four Courts garrison in the Civil War. Afterwards, he returned to his old job at Dublin Corporation. His wage in 1935 was just over £4 a week.
And the big problem is that after the Rising, the Dependence Fund, which was run by the women, looked to the widows first, those who lost most, lost their wage earners, and helped to push those men forward at the expense of those who survived.
And there was a great hurt in our family after 1916 because our family, our forefathers, they were anti-treaty. And anybody who was anti-treaty was a criminal. So I can remember my dad saying to me as a kid like Aaron, as his age, well actually younger, he said to me, whatever you do, he said, my dad said to me, which is Christopher's son, he said to me, you never ever join the army. Now whatever disdain that had left on him and whatever terrible taste my father seen as he was a child growing up, probably like Francis's dad, and seeing the treatment that they got after 1916 was horrendous.
Yeah.
They were third-class citizens. I mean, and because they were living in Dublin and were in the tradespeople, they had nothing.
One of the things I know that comes down often, people who talk to their fathers or mothers or whatever and said, why did you do it? Common answer, most common answer was so you wouldn't have to. And we need to remember that these men, these women fought for us. They didn't do it for themselves. They knew that even if they succeeded, what they were going to have was, a totally disrupted country. They were going to have to start from scratch. It was going to be tough, but their children would have it easier, and that's what they did it for. And we need to remember that.
Daniel Courtney, grandfather of the Citizen Army, died on the 24th of August 1943. His funeral was one of the last major outings by the dwindling band of ICA veterans of the Rising. The honour guard included Walter Carpenter, Vincent, Christy and Patrick Poole, James Joyce, Bill Oman, Joe Whelan and Fred Henry. In 1949, a photograph of Poole along with Jimmy Mallon and Liam Daly appeared on the cover of the Irish Time Pictorial magazine, described as one of the men who made it possible for a republic to be declared this weekend. He died in 1955 in Dublin and was buried with full military honours in Mount Jerome Cemetery.
The general attendance included Mr. Liam Cosgrave, Minister for External Affairs, Mr. Devilier, Mr. Oscar Traynor, TD, Mr. W.T. Cosgrave, Alderman Bourne, TD, Lord Mayor of Dublin, Mr. D. Larkin, TD.
With the rising of the Easter sun, how the morning breaks to the sound of guns. For 6 whole days the battle roared through the streets of Dublin to the Four Courts. With the setting of on the Easter sun, no turning back, nowhere to run. How could they sleep? Did they lie in fear? Oh, their choice ran deep, their choice for 100 years. So look at us now, 100 years old, because of brothers, they stood as one. So look at us now, 100 years old, come and feel the warmth of the Easter sun. Kilmainham jail in the month of May was those 14 men still not afraid? As the shots rang out, they looked and prayed. Oh, they made their choice, not afraid, not afraid to die. So look at us now, 100 years old, because our brothers stood as one. So look at us now, 100 years old, come and feel the warmth of the Easter sun.